now listening to your brain on air. The program will begin shortly. Enjoy. 您正在收听的是大脑之声广播节目，节目即将开始，敬请欣赏。
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to your Brain on Air. I'm your host, Ollie Vogt Larson, and happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. There's so much that we can talk about today. There's so much happening in the news. There's so many things that are inundating your news cycle very likely. I bet you feel harassed, quite frankly. It's inescapable. The level of tragedy, the level of chaos, the level of, airport batteries that there are likely going to be happening. And by batteries, I don't mean like the types that you charge something with. I mean the types where you might see some specials on the news. I saw San Francisco is already having some issues at their airport, and there's some video footage that's spouting out around X, whatever, Blue Sky, whatever your source, whatever your heroin vein for the latest in the media is. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to waste any of our times. Let's just jump right into it. Why don't we? We're going to cover ICE agents deployed to multiple airports across the United States. I mean, they're saying that they're just doing this to assist the TSA. I'm not sure how much anybody really believes them, but they're apparently going to be enforcing they're going to be doing immigration enforcement as they typically do. That's what immigration and customs enforcement tend to enforce immigration laws. So, if you're not going to be happy about that, I don't know what else to say except for this first story is going to be rough. Go. The travel nightmare across the nation's airports has taken a sharp and controversial turn this week, ladies and gentlemen. If you thought it was going to be rough because you had to get to the airport 4 hours early, your kids, they're bitching, they're whining, whatever your spouse, they were late. They either took too long to shave this morning or they took too long to get ready, whatever it is. You're not feeling great as is. You already had to turn up, because you're going to get patted down by TSA, but you're going to be standing in line for about 4 hours, 3 hours. That's the wait times that I'm generally hearing from airports across the country. Not only is that going to be something that you're going to have to worry about, you're going to have to worry about whether or not you're going to have a protest erupt or maybe some sort of violent event. That's what I'm worried about, ladies and gentlemen. All right, the Trump administration, if you don't know, has begun deploying hundreds of immigration and customs enforcement, ICE agents, to the front lines of the TSA crisis. Starting Monday, agents were spotted at 14 major hubs, including Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson, Newark, and Houston's George Bush Intercontinental. The move is in a direct response to the 39-day partial government shutdown that has left roughly 50,000 TSA officers working without pay. Damn, leading to a massive spike in call-outs and security wait times that have exceeded 4 or 5 hours in some cities. God damn. While the White House describes these agents as force multipliers intended to free up specialized TSA staff by guarding exit lanes, checking IDs, standing by the doors, whatever you do. The deployment has triggered, obviously, a firestorm of criticism. Many people are unhappy about this. In a move that has only heightened tensions, President Trump issued a directive for these agents to perform duties unmasked. The decision he defended as a way to provide more, quote, visible and transparent security presence. If you could start doing that on American streets, I think that would actually make things even better and harder to deny that you're being draconian about it. However, the sight of armed, unmasked federal agents in civilian terminals has led to volatile scenes in several airports. Frustrated travelers and activists have hounded the agents. They're leading to verbal confrontations and accusations of intimidation. Legislative stalemates are continuing in Washington, and they are the root of the gridlock. It's the main reason that you're going to be struggling to get your family anywhere, or yourself, even if you're an alone traveler, if you're just traveling with your spouse, whatever your travel crew is, it's going to be 10 times harder you are going to be shepherding them through the valley, but the valley is the shadow of death right now, as the Senate is remaining in deadlock over stricter immigration enforcement regulations and funding for the Department of Homeland Security. ICE agents remain on the payroll thanks to the separate multi-billion-dollar funding bill passed last year. TSA continues to bleed staff with over 400 officers resigning since mid-February. Aviation experts warn that while ICE might be able to monitor the door, they lack the specialized training and certifications to operate X-ray machines or conduct pat-downs. I think that they're going to find a phone and they might pull a gun on somebody, meaning that even with the extra boots on the ground, the bottleneck at the actual screening machines is unlikely to vanish anytime soon. Let's get a clip from ABC News. Go.
Breaking developments tonight at airport.
Go.
Airports across the U.S., hundreds of ICE agents have now been deployed to more than a dozen airports. President Trump sending them in amid the growing TSA security lines. It's day 38 now of this shutdown. TSA workers still going without pay. Tonight, those TSA workers and passengers, some waiting 6 hours in line, saying lawmakers from both parties should come up with a solution to pay the workers. And why President Trump tonight is telling Republicans not to make a deal. Steve Osunsami at the airport in Atlanta.
While lawmakers in Washington tonight struggle to come up with a deal to end the partial government shutdown and end the long security lines at the nation's airports, federal ICE agents under orders of the president have started appearing in at least 14 airports, charged with helping move people through security checkpoints. They've certainly been visible in Houston, New Orleans, Cleveland, Phoenix, Atlanta, and Newark without the masks that bring complaints from their critics. But outside of crowd control, passengers say they aren't seeing much of a difference.
We're flying at 12:30.
So you got here really early.
6 hours ago. Yeah.
People who are giving themselves several hours to get through security are still cutting it close or missing their flights, caught in lines, running out into the street. KTRK's Sarah Al-Sheikh is in Houston.
We're inside Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston, where the line stretches down here to the basement and goes up 2 more floors to the TSA checkpoint. People telling us it's taking them about 5 hours to make it to that checkpoint.
The number of TSA officers without a paycheck who are no longer coming into work continues to grow. Around 40% calling out in New Orleans, Atlanta, and Houston Intercontinental on Sunday.
What I see ICE agents doing is helping TSA plug the holes of security.
Plug the holes. One of my favorite things about having director Tom Homan is he reminds me of an old man that would tell me stories when I was a young lad. You know what I mean? His very particular draw that he has on words where you don't even think that a draw is possible, he manages to get a draw out of it.
And that represents TSA workers says that ICE can't really help move the lines because the agents aren't trained to work airport security.
ICE agents can't work in a lane and work it.
Republicans had entertained the idea of reopening all of the Department of Homeland Security except for ICE and to fund that agency separately. But tonight, President Trump says make no deal unless you pass his Voter ID Act.
And I'm suggesting strongly to the Republican Party, don't make any deal on anything. The most important thing we can have is what's called the Save America Act. Don't make any deal on anything unless you include voter ID, and you have to be a citizen to vote.
But Democrats say they've offered to pay the TSA agents immediately, and that it's the ICE and Border Patrol agents who they want to bring changes to.
I honestly think that the politicians should just quit penalizing the people who are trying to do their job, and frankly, they shouldn't get paid.
She said penal.
Penalizing the people who are trying to do their job, and frankly, they shouldn't get paid until they get this straightened out.
TSA workers have now gone 38 days without a full paycheck and are having to make that work. And this standoff right now has no end in sight. David?
Yeah, that was something the passenger who told Steve waiting 6 hours today. Steve, thank you.
I love how he's like, yeah, Steve, shut up. We get it. Someone said that earlier, all right? You're not telling us anything we don't already know. Here's Deborah Roberts to fill us in a little bit on the LaGuardia Airport incident. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, 2 pilots were killed after an Air Canada Express jet collided with a fire truck. The latest on the investigation.
The latest on the terrifying deadly collision of a passenger jet and a fire truck at LaGuardia Airport here in New York City. The NTSB investigation is now underway, and we're learning new details about the moments before the crash and the lives lost in this horrific accident. Tonight, new video posted on X showing the terrifying moment an Air Canada flight slams into a fire truck at New York's LaGuardia Airport. A passenger recording just moments after escaping the plane, others still filing out as the nose of the plane tips up. An Air Canada Express flight from Montreal colliding with a fire truck.
Listen. I flew not too recently. You know what I mean? I was 2025, so admittedly, it's been a minute. But what I'm trying to say about this, what my point is is that when you're coming in, when you're flying in and you are traveling however many miles per hour, you know what I mean? It's fast. When you're actually approaching the airport itself, you got to think about it. You got to go fast in order to keep a couple ton metal object in the sky. So, to create drag, lift, whatever, the fake magic that they tell us, when really it's just magic. That's how they make it fly. When you actually touch the ground and you feel the person, it's almost like you can feel the person in the front, the pilot pulling back on the actual mechanics, because the entire plane, you can feel it fighting to slow down. You can feel the, it's like there's real power behind it. And every single time I landed at an airport recently, I felt like we were going to run off the runway. And every person knows exactly what I'm talking about. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's go.
On the runway.
Stop truck one. Stop. Stop truck one. Stop.
The crash
Stop truck one. Stop.
The pilot and co-pilot.
It was an aviation disaster, the likes of which we've not seen here in over 3 decades.
There's Zohran Mamdani standing in the background of Hochul. His wife recently had to delete her X account because Zohran Mamdani's wife, if you don't know, she has a colorful vocabulary. She said she used the N-word. She's listen, many people will go, well, she can use it. She's Southeast Asian, excuse you. That is what race is Zohran Mamdani's wife? What race is Zohran Mamdani wife? There we go. What is she? Rama Dawaja. She is Syrian. Exactly. She can't use that word. That's not her word. She's not Afro-Eurasian.
High-impact crash. We're talking likely over 100 miles per hour. And one of the flight attendants had her back towards the cockpit as she was sitting in the jump seat. The force of this crash ejected her from the aircraft.
That flight attendant, among the more than 41 of the 76 people on board, and 2 in that fire truck, hospitalized.
Fuck.
The crash fueling fresh flying fears.
We are at a breaking point, and now you add on top of a government shutdown, chaos at the airports, and that only adds one more layer of stress to an already stressed out system.
Coming after thousands of TSA agents calling out from work Saturday.
Can you imagine needing to fly soon?
LaGuardia, one of the nation's busiest airports, closing down immediately, further complicating travel in the New York area. LaGuardia, one of the nation's busiest airports, closing down immediately. The FAA issuing a ground stop for all planes headed there.
Damn.
Over a dozen
It's just one fire truck.
Airports.
LaGuardia Airport is closed at this time. No aircraft in or out.
LaGuardia reopening with just one runway after a 14-hour shutdown.
Wow.
Before it was struck, the fire truck, a part of a fleet responding to a call for another plane reporting an unusual odor.
There was a lot going on at the time of this accident. So it was rainy, visibility was not great, it was fog, it was a United aircraft that had an emergency, so the fire crew was looking to get across the runway quickly to help United.
If you collide with vehicle, just hold position. I know you can't move. The vehicles are responding to you now.
The plane's nose in shreds, hanging into the runway below.
Damn.
The mangled fire truck on its side in the grass, surrounded by
the fact that you close the entire airport, you delay so many people's days for one plane hitting one fire truck. You close the whole damn airport. Maybe I could understand closing that lane, but you know what I mean? You got a couple more.
All of a sudden, boom, woke up in shock, just didn't know what to do. People were just in shock, like people were like caving in, just heard a loud bang, and then everyone's like freaking out, not knowing what to do.
Moments before the crash, the truck asking for permission to cross a runway.
Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower requesting to cross 4 at Delta. Truck 1 and Company, cross 4 at Delta. Truck 1 and Company crossing 4 at Delta.
But
So-
soon after, telling the truck to stop.
Stop, Truck 1. Stop. Stop, Truck 1. Stop.
That warning apparently coming too late. The air traffic controller shortly after heard talking to a Frontier pilot who witnessed the collision.
Frontier 4195, I got the word that we're going to be closed for a little while. If you want prepared to return to the ramp, let me know.
Yeah, we got stuff in progress for that, man. That wasn't good to watch.
That wasn't good to watch.
Yeah, I know. I was here. I tried to reach out to my stuff, and we were dealing with...
I love the air traffic control. He's so gay and sassy. Yeah, I know. I was here. I tried to reach out to myself. We were dealing with an emergency earlier. I messed
man,
up.
you did the best you could.
Nah, man, you did the best you could. Listen, 2 people are dead, anonymous air traffic controller. If people want to bay... Okay, there's a very famous story. If you're in the YouTube area where you put on scary videos to go to sleep, maybe you've heard the story of this one old lady. She was calling the police because she was running mail, I believe. She was a male person, and not like she was a male, like as in she was a male human, but she ran the mail, you know what I mean? The open the letter, you read it, whatever. And she was driving her own vehicle, because often, you don't know this, but post people have to do that very often, especially if they work for USPS or anything like that. And she drove into... I believe it was a road that had been over flooded, you know what I mean? And she, at this point, she, like, for some odd reason, couldn't use her common sense to figure out that the water was too deep and was only getting deeper. She proceeds to drive into the overly flooded road. Her car obviously stops, and then she calls the police because she cannot find a way out of the car somehow. She cannot manage to open the vehicle while the water is relatively shallow. She cannot manage to get herself out. And then she calls the police. And then I have heard, and I've listened to the entirety of this phone call. I listened to the part where she gets drowned. I listened to all of that. And people wanted to get pissy and cancel the 911 operator when all she said to this woman that even could be a little bit attributed as nasty or like rude or whatever, all she said was, "Shut up, you're going to need to calm down for me." That's all she said to this woman. And for some odd reason, and guess what? She was 1 day from retirement. She was 1 day from retiring, and people want to get pissy at her just because she didn't. This woman has spent her entire career likely hearing situations exactly like that, probably hearing kids calling in a domestic violence report on their own parents. You know what I mean? 911 operators, I understand people say you have to be compassionate, you have to be whatever. This woman did objectively nothing wrong. Everybody tried to cancel her and make her like a notorious figure when she objectively did nothing wrong. This air traffic controller, though, blood on his hands. That's all I can say. The one situation is not like the other. You know what I mean? He's not a 911 operator. He is the air traffic control. It's up to him to make sure that the plane doesn't slam into a truck. You know what I mean? He should have known that there was someone coming in on Delta 4. Is that the ramp or whatever? He should have known. What a dumbass idiot. He ended up getting 2 people killed.
Man, that wasn't good to watch.
Yeah, I know. I was here. I tried to reach out to my stuff. We were dealing with an emergency earlier.
Your fault. Yeah, you did.
No, man, you did the best you could.
NTSB now deep into investigating how this could have happened.
Clearly human error. Somebody made a mistake in clearing the fire truck across the runway. But why did that mistake happen? That's what the FAA needs to figure out. Was somebody distracted when they shouldn't have been distracted? Was the United emergency flight distracting the crew in the tower?
It takes months, sometimes up to a year, before we get the findings of that investigation.
I want New Yorkers to know that the National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the cause of this accident, and that we will not rest until the conclusion of that investigation.
Well, Zoran, I'm glad that you're tackling it.
We'll continue to follow the latest on the investigation into the crash.
Thank you. We really appreciate it, miss. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, feel free to be nervous to fly. It's probably better to go into it with a little bit of nerves than to go into it a complete schmo and schmuck. You know what I mean? Don't be so scared that you're going to be whatever, gripping the seat the entire time. But, be scared enough. Just be cautious, be aware. Check to see what the record is of who you're flying with. You know what I mean? Check to see if they have a good fly record, good safety record, all of that. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we need to briefly switch over to the latest in the Iran war conflict. Not only do we have Ayatollah Gay 90s, we have, I love Mujtaba Khamenei as much as the next guy, but apparently he might be a fan of the lads, you know what I mean? Good for him. No one's trying to take that away from him, but we're going to talk about how in Israel, allegedly, there's been strikes on Tel Aviv. If you talk about it, you get banned. If you, even if you allege that their Golden Dome, whatever you want to call it, their Iron Dome, if it's not working perfectly, if you, post videos from Dubai or anything like that, you're gonna, you might get a knock on your hotel room. That's what I'm trying to say. Be grateful that we don't have that level of suppression on our freedom of speech, and that it's only in Florida where they come and knock on your door if you post something about the Jewish mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump over to the Iran conflict now. Ooh, Iran is inflicting heavy damage on Israel in the latest missile strikes. If you don't know, military and missile, why not?
To the Middle East and the expanding war. Tonight, Israel destroyed a key bridge in southern Lebanon as it battles Hezbollah, the armed Iran-backed group. More than 1 million people in Lebanon have fled the fighting. CBS's Charlie D'Agata is in Tel Aviv with the latest on the conflict. Charlie.
Good evening, Jerika. As we head into week 4 of this war, the Pentagon says each day's airstrikes are bigger than the last. Yet today, we saw Iran strike back in a dramatic escalation to this conflict. Iranian ballistic missiles struck Israel overnight.
Damn.
Inflicting damage on a scale not seen here since the beginning of the war. The southern city of Arad targeted, emergency workers arriving to a scene of devastation. In the daylight, we saw walls sheared off apartments, windows blown out of bedrooms. A bus waiting at the sidewalk, shredded to pieces.
Looks like
From
Chernobyl.
the scene of one of those missile strikes, you can see this massive crater left behind. But officials tell me as bad as this was, it could have been a lot worse because it landed in the middle of this neighborhood of apartment blocks instead of a direct hit.
A direct hit. Yeah, thank God.
Like Amelia allude.
Thank God it landed. Can you imagine that? You're like, thank God this bomb landed in the courtyard between our apartment buildings and didn't just land on the apartment building or my apartment building next to me, whatever.
Had taken cover in shelters. You knew this was different.
Yes, totally. This is the first time that I hear something like that. I can't believe it.
I can't believe it.
Destruction and everybody's alive.
It's a miracle.
I can't believe it. It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
200 people were injured in this strike and one in the nearby city of Dimona. Officials tell CBS News that U.S. aircraft have flown 8,000 combat missions, hitting 7,800 targets since the war began more than 3 weeks ago. Yet Iran continues to hit back, launching the first strike on Diego Garcia, the U.S.-UK base in the Indian Ocean, around 2,000 miles away and thought to be out of range of even the most powerful Iranian missiles. So the clock is now ticking after President Trump warned Iran that if it doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz completely, the U.S. will obliterate Iran's power plants. Iran responded by saying they'll shut down that vital waterway indefinitely if that happens. Okay. So would you call this a shattering milestone to be at? The Israeli air defenses failing to intercept a series of heavy Iranian ballistic missiles. I'd say that the Iron Dome is compromised, and the arrow systems that they were so proud of. I think that they're a little more sensitive in the southern region, as many people would like to say, thinking that it's an innuendo. It really isn't. Dimona and Arad. Rescue workers from Magen David Adam report that the direct hit on a multi-story apartment complex in Arad left dozens of injuries, with several buildings in danger of collapse, while the Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center was not directly struck. The International Atomic Energy Agency is monitoring the site closely after the missile landed in its immediate vicinity, marking the most immediate threat to Israel's nuclear infrastructure in history, very curiously. The violence has also since expanded to the heart of the country, with waves of missiles targeting Tel Aviv, and it's also upscale northern suburbs. If you're thinking, I'm going to go live in the nicer regions where I can take my kids to school, there's none. If you want to live in a paradise, the Middle East is not a great option right now. I'm just going to be really, really honest with you. Witnesses describe gaping holes torn through high-rise buildings and craters lining the streets of the coastal metropolis after a direct hit by a 100-kilogram warhead.
While early reports indicate only light injuries in the Tel Aviv district, the sheer volume of the barrage, combined with the use of the sophisticated cluster munitions designed to saturate defenses, has sent millions of residents repeatedly scrambling for bomb shelters. Israeli Police Superintendent, God, I'll get it, Fadida Yaniv confirmed that several impact sites are being treated as active munitions zones, as bomb disposal teams are working to clear unexploded sub-munitions from residential areas. In a fierce retaliatory response, the Israeli Air Force launched a massive wave of airstrikes over central Tehran overnight, targeting headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and the Iranian Military Intelligence Ministry. The Defense Forces claim to have destroyed over 50 high-value targets, including subterranean ballistic missile storage sites, in an effort to break the back of the Iran's remaining launch capabilities. However, with the Iranian officials claiming that they have entered a new phase of the battle, President Trump also warning of the obliteration of Iran's power grid if the attacks don't cease. The conflict in general is hair trigger. We're, we got to keep a close eye on this. Speaking of which, we don't love to talk about what's going on in Iran, because when it comes to like what's going down on the streets right now, let's call it the grassroots revolution that Trump was hoping to inspire. It's not taking root. You know what is it called when when you give an organ and the body is rejecting? You know what I mean? We attempted a transplant via the decapitation of its leadership, and unfortunately for us, the people were just kind of like left with their hands, up in the air, and they were just like, well, what do you want us to do? And it's like, what we wanted you to do is we wanted you to take your destiny into your own hands, have a little of that American ingenuity. And then that's when it clicked in our heads, and we were like, oh shit, we're encouraging them to, take up arms. We're encouraging them to kill parliamentary members, and we're hoping for some reason that whoever assumes power, whoever it is, we're hoping that that's not going to be like the Iranian version of ISIS. Whatever. Iranian women in general are some of the greater victims of this. They're still demanding greater freedom. Let's check out this ABC News Prime Focus piece.
This was the Geisha Street Morality Police Station.
Tehran.
The center, now a smoldering pile of rubble, full of memories many women in Iran want to forget. They were arrested and brought here to be questioned for their alleged crimes. Things as simple as wearing short sleeves, a dress the morality police felt showed off their body, or revealing too much hair underneath their obligatory headscarves. A 30-year-old Iranian photographer told us this. She wishes to remain anonymous, and we altered her voice for her protection.
It feels like chains that were wrapped around my neck, hands and feet are finally being unlocked. They created such fear and terror in our lives that even people like us, who are peaceful by nature, found ourselves wishing for their death every day.
She says every time she leaves her house, she fears arrest and imprisonment. The regime creating a climate of complete despair and anxiety.
I keep thinking about that embroidered white sleeveless top that I had as a child. The one they told me not to wear or I would be punished. All those insults, the humiliation, the slaps. Ma'am, give us your ID. And suddenly you were shoved into a van. Is that over now?
There's hope. It might be. Since the Iranian Revolution 47 years ago, women in Iran have been fighting for their freedom. It has never been without sacrifice. Today, there was a near total communication blackout across the country, and more than 1,000 people have been killed since the start of the war. For more than 10 years, I've been in touch with a woman inside Iran who asked us not to use her name. She told us, after the explosion of the oil depot near my house, I watched my neighborhood and house burn down and spent the night on the street. Despite losing her home, she says everyone in Iran rejoiced over Khomeini's death, especially families whose children were killed in protests in the last 2 months. Please take care of Iranian mothers. They can no longer bear the grief. It's a time of mixed emotions for both Iranians in the country and those that have been forced to flee, like Roya Parai.
When you first heard about the strikes on Iran, What was your first thought?
Like crying out of happiness and crying for my mom that she's not here to see this.
Roya escaped from Iran, fearing for her life, after her mother was shot and killed by regime forces during the 2022 Women Life Freedom protests, sparked when Masa Amini, a 22-year-old woman, died after being arrested by those same morality police. They accused her of wearing her hijab incorrectly.
What's your mom's name?
My mom's name is Nino Majidi. She was so lively.
Roya holds the former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei personally responsible for her mother's death.
I wanted everyone to know her name. I shaved my head. I took my hair with me at her graveside, and I stood there with my hair in my hand, and I asked someone to take a photo of me. It went viral. I think a lot of people who saw the photo got this message of like grief, but at the same time resilience, like standing still and not letting them to break us.
Iran has a long history of women making their voices heard. In 1979, weeks after the Iranian Revolution put the first Ayatollah in power, the regime ordered all women to wear the hijab. More than 100,000 of them responded in Tehran, chanting, "We didn't have a revolution to go backwards." 30 years on, and several protests later, the Green Movement of 2009 over rigged elections saw women protesting in public yet again. It was the spark for Atana Dayemi.
I was 21 years old. I even took part in a couple protest rallies. There I decided that as an individual and as a woman, I must advocate for human rights for the future of Iran.
In 2014, Atana was arrested and spent 5.5 years in jail for charges including insulting the supreme leader. She now worries about those still behind bars, especially the tens of thousands arrested in January per Amnesty International. Thousands more were killed, according to the human rights activist news agency.
Now that Khamenei is dead, the remnants of the Iranian regime are furious. The prisoners are deeper in danger of being targeted indiscriminately by them. Or similarly to the previous Israeli attack that hit the Evin prison, they could get hit.
At least 80 people died in that Israeli strike on Evin prison during the 12-day war last June, according to official Iranian statements. Now in the midst of war again, Atana remembers her time behind bars. It was the women that she says got her through.
What helped me endure was the unity that we women had inside the prison. My inmates were exquisite human beings and turned into my family members, like sisters and mothers. We cried, danced, and protested together.
She tells us it will take more than the death of Khamenei to be free.
There are a lot of officials like him in the Islamic Republic structure. As long as the structure remains, I am still worried and don't feel freedom.
But these women have stood up and fought back against the regime for decades. They tell us they won't stop their fight.
I wish for a day where Iran is free.
My actually only wish is that Iran will be free.
I have my doubts, but ladies and gentlemen, however you feel about the Iranian regime, Christ is king, the Crusades are back, and we are reconquering the entirety of the Middle East. You know what I mean? From the Euphrates to the Nile and beyond, apparently, ladies and gentlemen. Greater Israel will be established, and Pax Jerusalem will begin. It'll be much like Pax Romana, ladies and gentlemen, if you are like me. You want to talk about other things that are going on in the world. You want to talk about the important things that we all need to learn about in order to keep our media diet healthy. You want to talk about the rapid-fire section of today's headlines. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I can't dedicate 2 to 3 paragraphs to every single thing that we could be talking about, ladies and gentlemen. There's 9 or 10 brand new stories coming out every single day. So I grab a few of the most important ones, the ones that are going to affect you personally, all of them. You know what I mean? Like for instance, ladies and gentlemen, it is hotter than ever. The last 11 years straight have been the hottest years on record, fueling the debate around the more extreme weather conditions. Let's go.
The Earth is getting hotter than ever, with the last 11 years the warmest since record-keeping began. Scientists are warning that this is fueling more extreme weather with no signs of slowing. The United Nations Weather Agency says rising greenhouse gases are causing the planet to take on heat faster than it can release it, and that trend is not reversing.
History repeats itself 11 times. It is no longer a coincidence. It's a call to act.
Climate officials warn that our reliance on fossil fuels is harming the climate and threatening lives. They are calling for a fast switch to renewable energy to protect the planet and its people. Well, the Earth is getting
fast
hotter.
Switch to renewable energy. Does anybody see that happening? Anybody anytime soon? Anyone out there, ladies and gentlemen? Speaking about the weather or the temperature, a super El Nino. What does that mean? And it's coming for all of us.
It's a super El Nino coming our way. El Nino is a natural climatic pattern where warm waters gather in the Pacific Ocean and act to boost the global average temperature. It can occur every 2 to 7 years, and as we're now coming out of the cooler phase of that pattern, forecasters in the US are predicting that one could develop later this year. And while there are some uncertainties, they're even suggesting a 1 in 3 chance it could be a strong or a super El Nino. What would this mean? Well, it could bring higher global temperatures as well as drought and wildfires in Australia, floods in South America, and fewer Atlantic hurricanes. And while there are a lot of ifs and buts in the UK, it could mean that our winter this year starts off quite stormy with cold weather following.
Who cares about the UK's conditions? It's unfortunate, but I'm going to be really honest with you. Who does care? I'll tell you what I do care about. Gas station heroin. Kratom. It is set to leave shelves, ladies and gentlemen. What is the scheduling of Kratom? Kratom, schedule. Yeah. It is officially according to, it is currently not scheduled under the Federal Controlled Substances Act, the CSA. However, the legal status of Kratom is highly fractured. Several states and localities are now doing their own schedules or bans. For instance, Connecticut, as I believe it should be properly pronounced, Connecticut, Susan Bajslewicz, I don't know, Jewish last name, Polish last name, it could be either, quite frankly. She is taking care of this serious issue. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever had a friend who's done Kratom, if you dabble in the world of Kratom, you know that it's kind of this matcha-like substance. It's more like a sludge in many ways. That's the most common, texture description that it receives, especially when you drink it, which is one of the most common ways of ingesting it. It's kind of people either do like a drink mix or they do like a pill. Kratom, it has multiple different ways of essentially working on you. But what I'm familiar with it doing is essentially acting as an opiate or opioid. God, there's different variations. Don't take my word as gospel, but it works as a pseudo-opioid. It works on the same receptors. It kind of gives you a it's more along the lines of euphoria. It's not really a physical high by any stretch of the imagination. You're not, tweaked out, you're not out on the couch or whatever, but it's I've heard it described as runner's high. It's a very, light on top of the world, almost energetic experience. I've heard it described multiple different, some people say it brings them down, some people say it brings them up, but whatever. It has multiple different applications for multiple different fellows and weirdos, and Susan, what's her name, Lieutenant Governor of Connecticut, has had enough of it. And ladies and gentlemen, it might be coming. A similar restriction might be on its way to your state soon.
Kratom and thianeptine and 5 other substances, as of March 25th, are going to be removed from shelves.
It will be a Schedule 1 substance, which means if you sell it, you can get arrested and prosecuted and incarcerated. And you can lose your license to sell other legal substances and your license to run a business.
Damn.
Substances do not have any approved medical uses. They have not been regulated, and they've even been found to be very dangerous for human consumption.
Well, the research on it being dangerous, it's whatever. I know that the addictive potential is for sure. Like, absolutely, a lot of people actually are getting addicted to it, unfortunately, and that's one of the bigger factors in why I don't encourage anybody hop on the K train. The K train sounds a lot more like you're talking about ketamine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Kratom. Kratom is a completely different game. I doubt that you're going to be, if you're a heavy investor in it, I don't think you're going to be drinking 4 or 6 cups a night, whatever. State officials, here it is. They have to remove it from all business shelves by Wednesday.
State officials are reminding businesses they must remove Kratom from store shelves by this Wednesday. The state finalized that rule, saying that Kratom is now classified as a Scheduled 1 controlled substance, making it illegal. Kratom is sold in beverages, pills, and gummies. Officials say it has no medical purpose and does not undergo testing.
A lot of the times it doesn't, believe it or not, actually. And a lot of things that you think that you're confident about, that you're confident about ingesting. I'm going to be so honest with you, most dispensaries are no better than getting a dealer. A dealer is actually a better, more reliable way to go. You, more often than not, know that you're not going to be scammed over. You know that your shit is not going to be honey wax. You know what I mean? That stuff that they put in carts in order to weigh them down or get them to move. Kind of similarly, when you do the bubble test, the honey wax, that's pretty much, it'll kind of pass it, but it's not exactly perfect. Some products that we're buying in dispensaries, given the fact that dispensaries are so new, given the fact that people are obviously not going to know how to navigate them perfectly, some of them are selling boof products, and we have to talk about it.
What if I told you some products for sale in cannabis dispensaries didn't actually come from the marijuana plant? I'm Evan Weiloge. I'm a reporter with the Denver Gazette, working with ProPublica. And here's what I found out. My colleague and co-reporter Chris Osher and I went to dispensaries around Denver and bought vape products, just like a regular customer. Watermelon, sorbet. Then we sent them to independent labs for testing.
Are you dropping more off? Yeah.
But we weren't testing for the levels of THC, the chemical that gets people high. Instead, what we were looking for are the chemical signatures that indicate that a product is made not from cannabis, but from hemp. What we heard from industry insiders was pretty alarming. There were already documented cases of companies creating this synthetic THC from hemp. The process to create this synthetic hemp-derived THC involved the use of some highly toxic chemicals, hexane, heptane, and one of the worst, methylene chloride. The ingestion of these toxic chemicals is linked with things like liver cancer, lung cancer, damage to the reproductive system, and damage to the immune system. We wanted to test the products ourselves because the state has a testing program, but they don't test for some of these chemical residues that we were interested in. So as we drove around and bought these products, we were sure to video record ourselves, documenting that clear chain of custody. There turned out to be a lot more chemical solvents in a lot of these products that were not declared on the packaging themselves. It doesn't show up on the packaging, and the consumers are left completely unaware that those might be in their product. It turns out that there's a lot more wiggle room in the cannabis industry for bad actors who want to make a little extra money by using these processes which produce these products at a much lower cost for them. Head to the link in our bio to read more.
Yeah, go for it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're curious about it, it's from a Denver ProPublica outpost, whatever you want to call it. Actually, a lot of places, DAP pens, whatever you want to call them, THC pens, any variety, they're actually illegal in a lot of instances. This one lawyer says that you can get, what's it called? You can get a felony for being caught with it in Texas?
What happens if you get caught with a dab pen in the state of Texas? What matters is what's in that dab pen. If it's THC or a THC concentrate, then what's going to happen is you're going to be arrested, you're going to go to jail, and then you're going to be charged with a felony. While we all know that marijuana itself is illegal in the state of Texas, THC in any form other than marijuana plant form is a felony. So if you have a pen that has THC in it or a THC concentrate, you're going to be charged with a felony in the state of Texas. And I know it doesn't seem fair, but that's just the way the law is written right now.
Sheesh. I guess, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of which, the crowd, the folks that I'm speaking to, the American audience, whatever you are, has America, if you're a viewer from the outside, have we finally turned the tide on obesity with our GLP-1 usage? Bowling Green, Kentucky has one of the highest rates of the weight loss drug, GLP-1s, whatever you want to call them, Wegovy, Ozempic, all of those junk drugs that are going to kill you one day. We are, as Americans, per the typical, they're not willing to calorie restrict, they're not willing to fast, they're not willing to do anything that involves demanding anything of themselves. So they give themselves a shot that actually changes their brain chemistry to make them crave less. And, Ozempic face has been running rampant ever since, and you can see it. It's a very obvious. You can see it in the face of people who've gone on GLP-1s. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about GLP-1s because apparently, people are thinking that the entirety of our country could rely on these as an effective means for losing weight, and I don't think that is the future.
Has America finally turned the tide on obesity? The US has long held the highest obesity rate in the industrialized world, with around 40% of adults classified as overweight. But the country's embrace of drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro has contributed to the most dramatic national weight loss in modern history. A recent study revealed the third consecutive drop in self-reported obesity rates for the first time ever. In Bowling Green, Kentucky, a working-class town with one of the highest obesity rates in the country, thousands of residents have prescriptions for GLP-1s. An uptake so high, the city has been dubbed the Ozempic capital of the United States. Several new med labs have opened up in the main street in the last year to service the growing demand for weight loss drugs. One resident, a 57-year-old writer, told The Times how his doctor advised he try the drug. After a serious knee injury, William gained weight and developed type 2 diabetes. For him, the drug was literally a lifesaver. Injections typically cost patients around $500 a month out of pocket, putting the treatment out of reach for many. With insurance, Williams are just $35. Currently, 13 states fully cover the treatment under Medicaid, and the Trump administration wants to increase that number. However, health experts caution that weight loss drugs are not a silver bullet that alone will end America's obesity problem. They point out that a myriad of factors, including genetics and socioeconomic status, contribute to the progression of the disease. But on the other hand, the dividends could be enormous, with obesity-related conditions costing the US $1.4 trillion a year.
Oof.
As the country grapples with these new drugs and a total government rethink of what Americans should be eating, have we finally found a way to make America healthy again?
Who knows? I'm going to be so honest with you, everyone. I don't know whether or not we've really turned the tide on our obesity issue. I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that we still have a ways to go before we can fully declare ourselves free of the vice that was food. One thing I do know about America is that apparently, according to many experts, economists even, the K-shaped economy recovery is here to stay. K-shaped economy recoveries, in case you don't know. That is what we've had ever since the COVID epidemic, where essentially you can think of it as the letter K, where one line is going up, one line is going down. The people who are already doing decent before the pandemic are continuing to do better, and the people that were already struggling before it are continuing to do worse. And the gap apparently is only continuing to widen.
I have some bad news for you. America's K-shaped economy is here to stay. If you haven't heard that term yet, well, it's a fancy way of saying the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It pretty much describes the country's worsening inequality gap. Economies can be classified in a few different ways as they rebound from a recession. Economists have widely agreed that the U.S. has been in a K-shape coming out of the pandemic. I've been writing about this for a few years. The K-shaped recovery explains how high-income consumers continue to splurge on luxury goods, homes, and travel, all while keeping their jobs during the pandemic. Consumers on the lower end of the spectrum are struggling to afford basic necessities like housing and groceries, and many during COVID lost their jobs or suffered pay cuts. Now the latest economic data shows that K-shape is diverging as much as ever.
Uh-oh.
Like why airlines are racing to build out luxury offerings, and at the same time, fast food companies keep announcing new value meals. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell talked about it at the most recent Fed meeting earlier this week. A key measure of wealth concentration, or the amount of wealth held by a select few, is sitting at a 60-year peak. That's a notable reversal from its multi-decade low, seen when economic stimulus checks were rolled out during the pandemic. And speaking of records, the top 20% of U.S. consumers, so those making roughly more than $175,000 a year, spent a record high in 2025. The other 80% of Americans spent a record low, and their spending has not outpaced inflation for the past 6 years. Our current situation really started decades ago during the Reagan administration, but it became better understood during the 2008 financial crisis and housing market crash. The jump in unemployment also reduced the earnings potential for people who weren't being steadily employed in their prime working years. Economists think the problem is just going to get worse. President Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill shrinks social programs like food stamps and Medicaid for the poorest Americans. And outside of politics, AI will likely disrupt who will get well-paying jobs. And the U.S. labor market is already unstable. There were over 50% more layoffs in 2025 than in 2024. So the economy is on a shaky foundation. As Mark Zandi put it, think of it like a house. You want it built on a broad, solid base. But right now, it's sitting on a few poles sticking out of the ground. If one of those poles get knocked out, the whole house is at risk of crashing down.
We'll see, you know what I mean? 6G technology, that sorts of stuff. Those sorts of leaps bounds forward, whatever you want to call them. I think that those are something to look forward to. Those are something that are probably going to help us maybe narrowly escape the fate that is consuming the future. G6, whatever you want to call it, 6G is coming. And if you don't know, 5G, last time we booted up a bunch of towers, people thought it was going to give everybody cancer. I don't know that is true. I'm not sure as to whether or not the 5G rays are giving your children AIDS in the future. I'm not sure if it's going to develop into, what's that one? HPV, whatever. Yeah, that one virus. I'm not sure whether or not that's something we have to look forward to with 6G, but according to them, they just want to make upload speeds quicker.
Remember when 5G promised us remote surgery and flying cars?
Yeah.
Things haven't quite lived up to the grand claims that carriers made. But at least Netflix loads a bit faster, right? Well, it's already time for 6G to start getting the limelight. Key industry players started talking about the next generation of cellular technology at Mobile World Congress recently. We're looking at a 2030 global rollout. So what's actually changing besides the number? The big focus this time is the uplink. 5G was great for download speeds, but carriers want 6G to make sending data to the network, like when you upload a 4K video, start a video call, or ask an AI
upload this fucking podcast.
The 6G infrastructure could also include AI nodes embedded into the network to reduce data processing time dramatically, so your query only needs to travel to a nearby node rather than all the way to a chatbot's data center. There's also talk of sensing. Basically, the network using terahertz spectrum acts like radar, seeing the shape and movement of objects and people without using cameras.
Radar being okay, so never mind. That's a video of ice in an airport. Don't with that. Radar being able to see people and objects moving without actually being able to see them. So this is like the James Bond films where like they use a heat signature to see somebody in like a parking garage or something. This is a little nerve-wracking. Like I personally
seeing the shape and movement of objects and people without using cameras. The idea is to use this to detect the presence of drones flying in the air or vehicles on the ground. Cool?
Pretty cool.
A privacy nightmare?
Privacy nightmare, absolutely.
Nothing is quite set in stone yet. Companies are still ironing out all the goals and objectives for 6G, and over the next few years, you'll probably hear grand claims and promises of holograms and human augmentation. But for most of us, it'll just be another reason to upgrade your phone. Remember?
Yes, it'll be a new, Kalshi, things like that. Whether or not Kalshi will still be around, because apparently the Senate is debating whether or not to ban that right now. Betting apps, things like that, they'll be able to run quicker. You'll be able to, if whatever your taste is on the internet, if you can frame log clavicular at a club 10 times quicker with your hologram. You can instantly teleport yourself in there and give yourself like 5 inches of height. That's just a thing that we're gonna all have to look forward to in the future, ladies and gentlemen. I think that we should cover our final story, because I've had enough for today. I'm sure you have as well. I've had a good time reviewing a lot of the new oncoming things. Let's talk about something a little less serious in order to break the tension of a Tuesday, because Tuesday, it's already a tense time of the week. You know what I mean? It's not quite Wednesday. You don't feel the relief of being halfway done, so it's why even get out of bed is the energy. So let's talk about something that is lighthearted, fun, a zero tolerance policy beginning to be enforced in Daytona Beach. Zero tolerance enforcement, ladies and gentlemen, begins now in Daytona Beach amid the spring break crackdown. Spring break, don't go to Daytona Beach, because whether or not you thought it was an iconic place to go let loose with your buddies, they have made it clear, not anymore. Keep you and your fun far away from here, ladies and gentlemen. We are not going to do any beach takeovers. We are not going to do any unverified barbecues. All of it is done, ladies and gentlemen. Daytona Beach, Sheriff Mike Chitwood, he is rolling out a zero-tolerance enforcement blitz following a chaotic weekend that saw 133 arrests on 4 separate shootings. Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood and local police have officially designated a special event zone, covering the heart of the beachside district. Within this zone, non-criminal traffic fines are being doubled, and police are authorized to immediately impound vehicles involved in any infractions for up to 72 hours. The message from the sheriff's office is blunt. The days of unsanctioned takeovers and social media-fueled mobs are over. The crackdown is particularly being focused on minors, with an emergency curfew now in effect for anyone under the age of 18 between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. And unaccompanied juveniles are prohibited from the streets in a designated zone. Sheriff Chitwood warned that any minor caught violating the curfew will be taken to a juvenile processing center, where they must remain until your parent or guardian travels to Daytona Beach to pick them up. This come get your kids strategy is designated to hold parents accountable for the nightmare scenes of the previous weekend, which included stampedes of reports of widespread theft and at local businesses. Blah blah blah. Got it. Overwhelm the system. There's like hundreds of kids. What I'm thinking these kids are going to do, if they really want to stick it to the man, is they're going to show up with a couple hundred of their buddies, and they're going to be like, try to arrest us all. That's my prediction. Holy shit.
After chaotic spring break scenes like this along the Florida coast, Daytona Beach officials issuing a temporary 8 p.m. curfew for anyone under 18. Law enforcement officials establishing a special event zone along the beach and enforcing the curfew within that area through next Thursday night.
You will physically be removed from the venue and processed at another venue.
The Volusia County Sheriff also cracking down on promoters who are allegedly publicizing unpermitted and unsanctioned Daytona Beach takeover events. They say they're draining local police, fire, EMS, and trash resources.
You are being noticed that if an event pops up here this weekend, we're going to have to do the rest of your money to pay for this thing.
Wow.
This weekend, Daytona Beach set to deploy more than 100 officers, including state troopers, on foot patrol just to manage the crowd.
It's not like these folks are SVP, so it's somewhat of a guessing game as to how many people are actually showing up.
Miami Beach, known for implementing strict spring break restrictions in the last few years, now taking a different approach, giving spring break a makeover and promoting health and fitness, a strategy that seems to have worked. Officials saying there were no shootings or fatalities over the past 2 years.
Oh, because they all worked out.
A deliberate pivot away from a party-centric spring break of the past and towards a month that celebrates all that Miami Beach has to offer.
And Miami Beach officials tell us that they're keeping security checkpoints and strict rules in place. Panama City Beach is now enforcing an under-18 curfew and overnight beach closures, and even Six Flags Over Texas requiring chaperones for guests under 18, so certainly cracking down.
Yeah.
Certainly.
In Miami, and I can tell you, it gets crazy down there.
And he was right in the middle of it.
Well,
come on.
Oh my god, I love when they just get fun with each other on the news. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you had a wonderful time listening to these stories. I had an even better time throwing them together. You know what I mean? You got to collect them. You have to find the perfect coalition. You know what? Because there's always I'm like a goldsmith, or what are they called? A gold panner. You go out in there in the rivers, you stick the pan, you sift through the the dirts and whatnot. There's so many stories that really don't matter. There was some Florida lady who killed her own kid and is apparently going to be not getting any jail time for it. We can't cover that, even though it's kind of a jewel. We're going for the gold, ladies and gentlemen. We're going for the gold, and we covered the important things that you need to know about. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'm proud of myself. I'm glad that we knocked it out again. We did it. If you would like to be here for our next broadcast, we are going to be covering the rest of the news as it comes out. Who knows? We might be going to war with Iran as far as things are going. And by going to war with Iran, I mean we might be doing World War III. We are already in this messy situation. We don't know where it's going to go. But if you would like to know about it on the way with the rest of us, go ahead and subscribe. Like the video if you liked it. Ring the bell if you want notifications. But ladies and gentlemen, in the meantime, I've been your host, Ollie Vogt Larson. Thank you so very much for listening. I will catch you in the next broadcast. Bye-bye.